In this screencast video, I'm going to show you how to write your first Ruby program. Here I am with an open terminal window on my Mac. I'm going to log into the computer science server at Staples, like this. Again, if you're on a PC, you'll be using PuTTY to do this. And now I'm connected. You can see that I have a lot of junk in my home directory. So I'm just going to make a new directory in here to start writing files in for this class. And I think I'll call it intro. Now you have this directory already, having made it in class yesterday. So now I'll change directories into this one. So cd intro. And now we're inside of that directory. And you can see if I type in pwd, it'll print the entire path to the screen, the directory that I'm now located in. Okay, well, the first thing I need to do is create an actual text file. And I'm going to give it a special extension since it's really going to be a Ruby file. But I'm not going to use a text editor like any that you might be familiar with, say like Microsoft Word or anything like that, because those text editors add lots of extra formatting information and special characters and things like that to text files. And compilers or program interpreters like the Ruby interpreter on this computer won't understand what all of that extra junk is inside of a file that's been made with a program like Microsoft Word. So we're going to use a bare bones text editor to make our first Ruby file. And the name of that editor is called VI. And VI is short for Visual Editor. It's an old Unix editor. It doesn't have any graphic user interface. You can't use your mouse with it. You have to just strictly type in key commands. I'm going to show you a little bit about the key commands you have to use, but we're going to use that VI editor to actually make our first Ruby program. And you're going to work in that editor for some time, probably a month to a month and a half, before we start to investigate other types of text editors that we can use to write real programs. Just going to dismiss this eternal Apple update notice here. All right, so to make a new file with the VI editor, you simply type in VI and then the name of the file that you want to create. Don't type in VI just by itself. Type in VI and then the name of the file you want to create. So I'm going to make a file called hello. And I'll give it the extension RB because Unix operating systems and PC operating systems will recognize the .rb extension as a Ruby file. So here we go. And I've now created the file, and I'm actually inside of this file. Technically, I've opened it up for editing. And I'm ready to start typing, almost, with one exception. Now that I'm in the VI editor, there's a couple of things I have to talk about for you to understand. First off, VI has two separate modes of operation. It has what's called command mode, where you can issue commands like write this file, or quit editing this file, or turn on syntax highlighting, or turn on number lines, or all sorts of kind of large-scale commands like that. That's called command mode. And then it has what's called insert mode. And if you want to actually type anything, you have to be in insert mode first. When VI starts, like it just did, it starts in command mode. To put it in insert mode, you type an I. And you can see you actually get an insert down here on the left-hand side to let you know that you're in insert mode. Now it's okay to type. If you had started typing before you did that, the characters wouldn't have appeared anywhere in the actual body of the document until by accident you typed an I, and then you would kick it into insert mode, and then everything you typed after that would appear on the screen. Once you're in insert mode, to get back to command mode, when you want to say save the file or quit, you use the escape key. I just hit the escape key, and you can see that the little insert notice down here has disappeared. And so now I can issue commands to the editor to do things, like I said, like save the file and such. And we'll get to that in a minute. But let's go back into insert mode with an I. So here we are. You can see the insert reappears. And let's type some Ruby. Now, I certainly don't mean for this to be an exhaustive tutorial. I'm going to show you a couple of things. We're going to look into a little bit. We're going to look into how to print output to the screen. We're going to look at how to get input from the user who runs the program. And we might even do a little bit of math in there as well. So first we're going to start with the most simple Ruby program that we can write, and its tradition in just about any programming class to make this your first program, so we'll stick with it. We're going to write what's called a hello world program, and we're going to do it like this. When the program runs, all I want it to do is print the words hello world to the screen. That's all I want. And in Ruby code, the way to tell the computer to print something to the screen is like this. Put, with an S at the end. And that's short for put string, because what you're going to do is put a string to the screen for the user to see. A string in computer programming is any sequence of characters, letters in other words. They must be enclosed in quotation marks in Ruby if you're making them strings. So if I type in put string, which many people abbreviate and just call puts, and then in quotes, hello, let's make it capital, hello, here we go, hello world, and we'll stick an exclamation point like that. So if I do that, I've just completed the most simple program that you can write in really any programming language. And now I'm going to quit the editor and go back to just the directory that this file is located in, and we're going to run this program. The way you quit the VI editor is to hit escape. It brings you back to command mode. Then anytime you want to issue a command, you have to hit a colon key. So that's shift and then the semicolon or colon key, like that. And you could see a little colon appears down here in the bottom left-hand corner, and I type in W for write and Q for quit. Now I can do those individually. I can just write and then later quit if I want to. But what most people will do is they'll do both at the same time. So WQ and return, and now I'm back. Now if I issue a list command to look at the contents of my directory, you'll see that in this intro directory there's now a file called hello.rb. So let's run it. The way you run a Ruby program is to type in Ruby and then the name of the file, hello.rb, just like that. I hit return. It's not very exciting, not a whole lot happens, but it prints the words hello world to the screen. Okay, let's make this more interesting. Let's have it do something a little more interactive with the person who runs the program. So I'm going to go back into editing this file, and the way you do that is just to type its name again, VI, and then the name of the file, actually. So VI hello.rb. There's actually a shortcut so that you don't have to type it all the time. If you simply type VI H and then hit the tab key, Unix will fill in the rest of the path for you. It's smart like that. Again, that's the tab key to fill in the rest of the path. Now, the only time you're going to get into trouble with that is if you had some other files in this directory that also started with an H, and then it wouldn't know what to do. So maybe if you typed in HE or HEL and then hit tab, it would fill in the rest for you. And that's a nice handy way of not having to type long file names all the time. Hit return. And if the file already exists, then VI will open it up for editing instead of creating it again. And there it is. We're back in our file. Okay, let's go into insert mode. So I've gone to the end of the line, and I'll hit I for insert. Okay, I'll go past that quotation mark, hit return, and we'll go down to the next line here. And I'm now on the second line of the file, and you can see down here in the lower right-hand corner of the window, you get the line number. If I go up, it's on line 1. If I go down, it's on line 2. And back to line 1, as I scroll over, the second number is the character number in that line. Okay, but line 1 doesn't have any other characters, so it says 2, 1. Let's get a name from the person running the program and find out what their name, find out who they are, and give them a more personal greeting. So instead of puts hello world, let's give them a prompt. Let's say puts hello, what is your name? Like so. And then I'm going to make a variable. Now, variables in programming are a big topic, and we're going to study them in detail. There's a lot to them. For now, we're going to keep it very simple. You can use any name for a variable that you want. Think of a variable as a container that's going to hold reference to the information that you assign to it. The only rule is you can't start variables with capital letters in Ruby. So they have to start with lowercase letters, and they can't have any spaces in them. So we tend to use underscores where we would otherwise use a space. So for example, I might create a variable named your name. Something to that effect. Again, you can't do your name, that's not allowed. And some people just kind of have a problem with underscores, they don't like them, so they do that instead, where they separate the different words with capital letters. There are names for this in programming. This is referred to as underscore case. It's a convention for writing variables. This is referred to as camel case. You can probably understand if I had a longer variable name like your first name or something like that, because the capital letters look like the bumps on a camel. Anyway, it doesn't much matter to me whether you use underscore case or camel case for your variable names, but you should probably adopt a convention and stick with it as you develop as a programmer. So I like underscore case for simple programs like this one, so I'll do that. So your name, and I'm going to use what's called an assignment statement. That's just an equal sign. And now I'm going to get input from the user, because when the program runs, it's going to prompt the user for their name, and the user is going to type in what their name is. And then I need to get that information into the computer and assign it to the variable your name. The way I do that is with a get statement, like that. Get, and then, of course, an S, gets, which is short for get string, if you were wondering. All information comes into the program as a series of characters that have been typed on a keyboard. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, because even if you type a number, when you're using the program, it goes in as a string. It goes in as an actual character. And we'll see what happens if we don't take that into account later. And then I'm going to issue a little method call after my gets, and it's chomp. And don't worry a whole lot about why I'm doing that. We always do that when we get user input. What it does is it removes the return character, which is what goes in when the user types in their name and then hits enter or return. That actual return is a real character. It's a /n or sometimes a /r, and I don't want that to be part of your name. For example, if your name is Dave, like mine is, then I don't want my name to go in as Dave/r or Dave/n. The chomp gets rid of that. So, more on methods and things like that, and this funny little dot syntax as the course goes on, of course. But for now, that's just what we type. Your name equals gets.chomp. And then once I've done that, let's return a more personal greeting to the person running the program. So I'll print something to the screen. Puts hello plus your name, like that, plus welcome to programming class, and then a period like that. And you can use these plus signs to join strings together. Remember, strings are sequences of characters. And what I'm doing here is joining them together. The plus sign means something a little bit different than it does for mathematical entities, where a plus sign is a sum of two numbers. If the things on opposite sides of the plus sign are both strings, then this plus sign joins them. In computer programming terminology, there's a fancy word for joining things. It's called concatenating or concatenation. That's something you'll become more familiar with too. So let's try this. Again, escape to go back to command mode. You can see down here the insert's gone. Colon WQ for write quit. And then return. I'm back here. Let's run the file. Ruby hello. And again, I'm going to use the tab button to show the whole path to the file. Hit return. Okay, and I'm greeted, hello, what is your name? My name is Dave. Return. And there's the greeting. Hello, Dave. Welcome to programming class. Now, it's not exactly the way I would want it. You can see there's no spaces, and that's an easy fix. I think you probably, some of you actually probably saw that coming when I was typing. I left those out on purpose. Let's go back and edit the file. By the way, a quick way to issue a command that's been issued before in your shell session here is to use the up arrow. This is sort of on the right side of the keyboard. If you hit the up arrow, you cycle through all the commands that you've ever issued during this session on the server. That's really handy because you don't have to type things all over again. So you can use the two arrows to cycle through them both backwards and forwards. So I'm just going to go back to vi, which was 2 commands ago, hello.rb, and hit return. All right, so let's put some space. Obviously, I need a space in here. Remember, insert mode. Hit the I first. And then I should put a space over here, like that. And now I've got something that I think will look a little bit better. Okay, before I go back and run it, let's do a little bit of math. Let's ask the user rather for some numerical information about them, like maybe how about their age. So let's again print to the screen. Please tell me your age, like that. And we'll make a variable, your age, set it equal to, you guessed it, gets dot chomp. And after that, let's tell them how old they are now, and let's tell them how old they'll be in 5 years, just some silly calculation like that, just so we do a little bit of math. So let's do puts, or put string, you are plus, and then your age is the variable. Got to remember to put those spaces in there, right? So that'll tell them how old they are. And then let's make a new variable, your age in 5 years equals. You can see actually, before we go ahead and do this, that something strange is happening with the color coding, right? If you look up here, you see variables are in black, but down here the variable is red. Strings are in red, like this one. The editor is telling you something, and it's telling you that that I failed to close the string on the previous line with one of those. See that? So the color coding is nice. It's helpful because it shows you mistakes like that. All right, your age in 5 years equals your age plus the number 5. And then let's output to the screen, puts in 5 years, you will be this old. And we'll end that quote, and we'll do plus your age in 5 years. It seems like overkill to type variable names like this. And in some senses it is in a program this simple. But the idea here, and what I'm trying to model, is that you don't ever want to use variables like x equals gets dot chomp. Well, we forgot the chomp, I think, on the... Oh no, we did it. We got it up here. Okay, good. But anyway, you don't want to ever do something like that, like x equals or y equals, because it's not informative enough. And when you go back to read a program that you wrote a month before, sometimes even just a couple days before, if you haven't named the variables well, sometimes you have absolutely no idea what they stand for, and you spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. Never mind if somebody else has to edit your code and make changes to it a year out, 2 years out, whenever. So programmers are taught to label their variables with long names. And I know that that's kind of contrary to what you've been taught in math classes, where variables are x or y or z or something like that. But we don't do that here. So be descriptive as possible. Okay, let me quit the editor, and we'll run this again. Ruby, hello.rb. The program starts off fine, asks me my name, so I'll type in Dave. Welcome to programming class, tell me your age, 42. I hit return, and something goes wrong. This is your first error that you've ever seen from a Ruby program. These errors that you get can be confusing, but they're really, really informative. This one says, can't convert fixed num into string. And you also get the line number of the error. It's happening in line 9 of the file. And it seems to be caused by a plus sign. Can't convert fixed num into string. That's an interesting error. You know, when you don't know what to do with these errors, the best thing that you can do is go look one up online. So let's try it. Can't convert fixed num into string. So let's see what we get. Let's see. Let's open a browser window. Let's get a new window. We'll type in Ruby can't convert fixed num into string. Oh, here's one that looks good right here. It's got the plus sign, and let's check it out. All right. This is a website called stackoverflow.com where programmers post their questions all the time to each other. This is a great resource. You're going to use it a lot throughout this course. Here it is, and you can see this person has an example that's very similar to ours. And then there's some suggested responses down here. I'm not going to go through this right now for the sake of time, but I just want to give you the idea that if you're encountering an error, you're probably not the first person to have it. So chances are there's somebody out there that's already has a post like this, and there's probably an answer. If not, you can join these forums where you can post yourself individual questions, and people will get back to you in good timing. All right, let's go back to the program. All right, so let's go ahead and edit the file. We're going to focus on line 9 when we get there. I'll see if I can, I'll explain to you what went wrong. A quick way to get to a line number, by the way, is just to type in a colon and then the line number. So if you want line 9, just colon 9, and it puts your blinking cursor right there. Okay. The problem had to do with the plus sign. Here's the deal. Remember I said that anything that was received from the user is brought into the program as a string. A string is a series of characters. And you know what the plus sign does for strings. It joins them or concatenates them. But over here, the 5 is not a string. When you type sort of just a naked number, just like that in a Ruby program, that object, that 5, is an example of something called a data type called a fixed num. Another word for a fixed num is an integer. In Ruby, you have integers or fixed nums, and you have floating point numbers. A floating point number would be something like 5.2. You can think of a floating point number for now as just a plain old decimal. Since ages are usually not quoted using decimals, we can just stick with integers like that, or fixed nums. Well, Ruby doesn't know what to do when you try to add an integer to a string. How do you add two objects that are of completely different types? Up here, I have no problem adding a string to a string. I know that the variable your age holds a string because that's what you entered. But here I'm trying to add a number to a string, and it doesn't know what to do with that. Now I could do this, but I think you'll see if I do that, you're going to get a surprise. So let's try that just to see. So we'll quit, colon WQ, okay, up arrow twice, we'll run the program, just like before. I'm 42, watch what happens. So it tells me, hey, you're 42 years old, and in 5 years you'll be 425. So maybe some of you expected that, but since I took the 5 and I made it a string by putting quotes around it, then the plus sign works perfectly well. It joins the 5 with the string that is 42, and it just makes 452. Well, that's not what I want at all, okay? So the way to fix this is to typecast the your age variable into a number. Typecasting is a complicated topic, and we'll get a chance to talk more about it. When you typecast something, you change the type of data that it is. You're casting it into a different type. That's why the term exists. So let's go into insert mode. Now, all programming languages have their syntax for typecasting variables. In Ruby, it's done with a dot syntax and a to underscore, and then a letter that is the first letter of the type of data you want to typecast it to. So I want to turn a string into an integer, so I type to I, like that. And then let me get rid of the quotes like that. Okay? So once again, I've taken the your age variable, which was, up until a moment ago, holding the string 42, or will hold the string 42 when I type that in when I run the program. And I've turned that into the number 42 by typecasting that into an actual integer. And then that can be added numerically to the number 5, and then we'll try to output that result here. So let's quit, run the program again, 42, and watch what happens this time. It's another error, looks like the same error as before, can't convert fixed num into string, looks identical, but you'll notice there is one difference. That's why these line numbers are so important. The error is now on line 11. It's 2 lines later than it was before, so that's good. That's good news. It tells me I've fixed line 9, but now I've got a problem further on down in the program. So let's take a look at that. So we'll go back and edit the file. We'll go into insert mode. We'll come down here, and we'll look at the last line, which is line 11. This is the problem right here. We now have the opposite problem that we had before. Your age in 5 years, this variable, is an integer. That's the type of data it is, and we're attempting to add it to a string over here on the left. Well, we can't do that. So that means we have to take this variable here and turn it back into a string so it can be concatenated or joined with the phrase before it. And the way you do that is dot to underscore, and the first letter of string is s, so to s like that. And finally, if we quit the editor, come back out here, if we run the program, Dave 42, and then it tells me in 5 years I'll be 47. How depressing. Okay, now that's a functioning program. It's not complicated, it doesn't do anything too interesting, but it does introduce you to some of the basic ideas and data types in Ruby. And I made those mistakes, obviously I made those mistakes on purpose because I wanted to point out some of the initial pitfalls that you're going to have when you program. I can't stress enough, though, the fact that those error messages that seem to be confusing at first glance are really worth spending some time looking into. Again, the line number is critical, as is the actual statement. Ruby is very nice and verbose about the nature of the error. It's a type error in this case, wrong data types. And as I said, when in doubt, I mean, of course you can always ask somebody else near you, but you can find most information that you need online. Google is your friend when it comes to programming. Okay, this concludes this tutorial. What I want you to do now is write your own program. Have it do something different than what I did, maybe something more interesting instead of just asking for your name and age. Who knows? You just come up with something. You can have it deal with money, you can have it deal with any numerical property that pertains to people or what they do. Get creative and write something that requires user input, so that the person running the program has to type in some information and then do something with that information. Do something to display it and do something mathematical as well, so that you get a chance to work with both numbers and with strings as well. Okay, write those programs in your intro directory, just like I wrote mine in my intro directory, and I can of course see into all your directories, so I can view these programs as you do them and after you do them to check out how they're going. You've got some time to do this, so you might want to watch the video again in parts and keep it open in a side window while you go through it, however you work best. Good luck.